Hey, what is up guys? My name is Oleg, this is Panda. Welcome back to the channel. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. Please subscribe if you like the content that you see. Now, before I start with this review, I just want to thank all of you guys who have subscribed, who are watching the videos, liking them. I really appreciate your support, and we recently reached 500 subscribers. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but to me, that is a world, because I see each one of you as a individual person, not just the number of subscribers. My goal is to reach 1,000, and when we reach 1,000 subscribers, I have a very special video for you guys. It's going to be a review of a watch that costs $25,000. So I have the review for you guys when we reach 1,000 subscribers mark. That's going to be live on the channel. So please support the channel, subscribe. Now let's get started with the review of this Seiko vintage chronograph. Alright guys, so here's my vintage Seiko chronograph that I bought at a flea market. If you watched my last week's video, the review of Taviz 999, I kind of teased this watch in that video. I don't normally do that, but I was just too damn excited about this watch and I couldn't wait to share it with you guys. Now I will share the story of how I bought the watch. Some people might find that interesting and maybe useful if you are looking for some vintage watches at the flea market, so maybe stick around, and that's going to be closer to the end of this review. I will also share the price that I paid for this watch at the end of this video as well, so you can tell me whether I got a good deal or not. Maybe I overpaid. I'm not too arrogant to admit that I don't know as much about watches as some of you guys, so I think I got a good deal, but you never know. So let me know in the comment section below. But for now, let's review this watch like any other normal watch that I have in my possession. Let's start with the dimensions. We have a diameter of about 38 millimeters, a lug width of 19 millimeters. It's 41.5 millimeters lug to lug, and it's just a hair under 9 millimeters thick. So just by looking at the dimensions and the case size, the watch is a bit on the smaller side by today's standards. Usually chronographs of today are starting from around 40 millimeters and go up from there. This being 38, it's only 2 millimeters, doesn't sound like a lot, but for watches it makes a huge difference. And of course the thin profile also contributes to the overall smaller wrist presence. Now I like the watch for that reason, but I know that some people might not enjoy it that much, especially if you have a larger wrist. Now, based on my research and just looking at the serial number, the movement, the case design, and doing some basic online research, I found out that this watch is from 1994. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 90% sure. I call it vintage just because 1994, 25 years old for a quartz watch. I think that's getting up there. All right, zooming in at the case, you can see that it's not stainless steel. It's chrome-plated brass or chrome-plated alloy metal of some sort. I believe the only stainless steel part is the case back. We also have a mineral crystal that is not scratch resistant. In fact, there are quite a few different scuffs and scratches on the crystal already. I might use something to polish them out, or I might leave them as they are. I haven't made my mind up yet. I don't mind a few scratches on the watch. I think they give it a little bit of a character, but again, not sure. And if you have any suggestions for buffing these scratches out, maybe leave them in the comment section below. Now, looking at the case and the overall design of this watch, you can see it's quite busy. So we have quite a few different pushers here, and we have dials and date complications and crown. So let me go through all of these and kind of tell you what they do. So first of all, let's get started with the functions of the watch. So obviously it's a chronograph. The red seconds hand is at a 0 position. When you start the chronograph, it will start going around. This subdial here at a 9 o'clock position, that's the seconds hand for the watch to kind of tell the time. At the bottom here, this dial here acts sort of as two different dials. So number one, that's a second time zone dial. So yes, this watch does have kind of a GMT function where you can have a second time zone time, and right now it's actually set to Ukrainian time, so when I talk to my aunt from Ukraine, I can kind of know what time it is back home. And lastly, here at the top we have a minutes track for the chronograph, and it's kind of hiding behind this red seconds hand, and I will start chronograph and show you what that looks like in about a minute here or so. Now we also have a date window at the 3 o'clock position, and if I move the hands out of the way, you can see it says Seiko Chronograph. Now one thing to note, when I do move the minutes hands, the red seconds hand does get misaligned. So I think that just comes with the age of the watch, and maybe I can fix that, but it doesn't bother me too much, because how often do you really adjust the time on a quartz watch? They're always very accurate, and what I could do, I can pull the crown out all the way here and just manually set the seconds date to a complete 0. Alright, so this is as far as my camera would zoom in on the dial. We have, as I mentioned before, 3 subdials going on. Here we have applied markings, applied batons for our markings. It says here Seiko Chronograph. That gives me very strong 90s, 80s vibe, that Seiko Chronograph writing. We also have the tachymeter on the side, kind of on an independent track above the minutes and the hour markings. And also there is a bit of loom, so there are some loom pips all around the dial, and also loom on hands. I will pop the loom shot on the screen right now. As you can see, the loom is not that impressive, but it's something, it's there, and it's not too bad for a watch of this type. Now, I know a lot of you are wondering, does the chronograph function actually work and what it looks like? So here we go. I'm gonna start the chronograph function. As you can see, the chronograph movement in this watch is pretty cool. It doesn't tick kind of 1 second at a time as a normal quartz watch would. As you can see, the seconds hand ticks 1 at a time. This one is more of a fluid motion, so I believe it's either 4 or 5 ticks per second, which gives it almost a look of a automatic chronograph and not a quartz chronograph. And as we're gonna have the the seconds hand pass by a minute mark, this red arrow will move for the minutes. Now the minutes do only go up to 30, so it's not an hour. Now once I stopped it, I can restart it again, stop it again, and if I want to reset it, just press the button over here and it resets it back to 0. And again, just to demonstrate it one more time, it's very fluid, and I love the reset. And that reset is on majority of quartz chronographs. It doesn't kind of jump back to 0, it fluidly glides all the way around the dial and resets back at 0. One thing to note, that the chronograph pushers are both on the top, so this one is to start the chronograph, to stop it, and this one is to reset it. This pusher here doesn't do anything with the chronograph. This pusher in fact is for the GMT function, or the second time zone function, as well as the alarm. That's right, this watch also has an alarm. And let me see if I can show you what the alarm would sound like. Yeah, that's pretty annoying. But it's there, and it's weird that it is, because it's a watch from 1994. I mean, this was the iPhone of its time. Now, to set the alarm, I believe you just press this button here. Oh wait, maybe I need, because there are 2 positions to the crown. Alright, there we go. And that's how you set the alarm. Or maybe that's how you set the second time zone. I need to read the manual again. No, that's how you set the alarm, and now it resets back to the proper time zone. The quartz movement of this watch is the 7T32 Chronograph Movement. It's kind of the granddaddy of the movement of this watch. This watch here is the Seiko Flightmaster, one of my favorite watches of all time. I already did a review of this watch, it can be found on the channel. And the chronograph movement, the quartz chronograph movement of this watch is the Seiko 7T62. So what are kind of the difference between the 7T32 and 7T62? Well, there are a couple of small differences that I noticed. One difference is the fact that the minutes track here goes up to 60 minutes versus here it's only for half an hour or 30 minutes. Another difference is actually how it changes the date. So the Seiko Flightmaster, the date change begins pretty much from 11:30 and goes all the way up to about 12, and then the date changes, versus the date change on this watch starts past midnight and lasts about until 1:30 in the morning. So those are the two differences in the chronograph movement that I found. Now, interestingly enough, the sweeping seconds hand looks about the same in both watches. Let me demonstrate. As you can see, again, it's a very fluid motion. It looks almost as if both chronographs are automatic and not quartz. One thing to note, obviously the layout of the pushers is also different between the two movements. So here we have kind of a standard chronograph layout, versus this watch is a little bit more busy with different, with the second crown and another pusher to set the second time zone and the alarm. And this watch here, of course, also has the alarm and the second time zone. It's just set a little bit differently. And once we stop this movement, or just stop the chronograph and we reset it, it looks exactly the same. And the same thing here. So you can see the kind of fluid sweeping seconds hand is the same in both watches. So of course I put it on the NATO strap. Now, one thing that you might not know about me, I don't really like NATO straps on the watches, but I love how NATO looks on this watch, and I actually already purchased a few other NATO straps to try it out and exchange them. And here's the look at the case back. It's just a plain stainless steel case back with some writing on it. So it just says Seiko, waterproof, stainless steel back, the reference number, the movement number, and that's about it. And here's what the watch looks like on my 7¼ inch wrist. As you can see, it looks absolutely amazing on this NATO. I love the Panda dial, and actually since I bought this watch, it was very hard to take it off my wrist. Now let me share a little bit of a story of how I came to buy this watch. So every Saturday and every Sunday in Vancouver, Canada, that's where I live, we have a flea market. Now, whenever I'm available, I like to go and check out some watches. Most of the time, they don't really have that great of a selection. Any luxury watches, or quote-unquote luxury watches, vintage luxury watches, I mean, so Rolex, Longines, Omegas, they're way too overpriced. I think people just know the name and they think their watch is worth a lot more than what it actually is worth. Now, this particular time I went on Saturday. I rode my bicycle all the way there. It's about a 10-kilometer ride, which is nice. Kind of get some fresh air, get some exercise, and at the same time go look at cool vintage watches. So I came in, looked around, and I found actually quite a few different cool watches. So there was another Seiko from a different seller. Now that Seiko was a vintage hand wind movement. I believe that one was from sometime around 1960s. The seller wanted a little bit too much money than that I was willing to pay for it, so I just let that one go. Now I also found a different Timex, again vintage Timex. I'm not sure how old that one was, and it was also hand wind movement. The seller wanted only $20 for the watch, and we just couldn't agree on the price, and he was a little bit of a rude person, so I decided to walk away from that deal. And also I found this watch and a different watch
from the same seller. So he had the Seiko Chronograph, the Panda that I bought, and he also had a different Secunda watch that was also quartz, was in a better condition than this, and it also had the sun and moon phase indicator, which I really like in the watches. However, again, I couldn't agree on the price with this seller on Saturday, so I just decided to let it go. And when I went home, and I couldn't stop thinking about this watch, I just fell in love. So the next day, Sunday morning, I went to the flea market once again, and I came in. Now the seller fortunately did not recognize me, so me and him have negotiated a deal, and on Saturday he wanted $70 for this watch, and I actually got him down to around $50. That's on Saturday. Now when I came back on Sunday, I asked him how much the watch was. As I said, he did not recognize me, so he said $50. So he already came down $20 just by himself. I offered him $25. We went back and forth, and we settled around $30, which is a fantastic deal. So I bought this watch for $30. It didn't have a battery. Cost me another $3 to replace the battery, and that's it. And I have this beautiful chronograph for about $30. Not too bad. Now I looked up online other vintage chronographs that are similar to this, and again, depends on the condition. This condition is not that great, so they go anywhere between $100 or maybe $80 to about $200, again depending on condition. But I couldn't find identical dial to this one. I think this dial is somehow rare. Without me even knowing it, I think I bought a pretty rare dial variation, because the other Panda chronographs from this age, or Panda dial chronographs from this age, have the tachymeter all in black to match the subdials, and the seconds hand is not red, it's white. Now this one, obviously the tachymeter is cream color to match the dial, and the seconds hand is red, and the minutes hand for the chronograph is also in red. So I'm not sure if it's a more rare version of the same chronograph, or I don't know what it is, but I couldn't find exactly the same example of this watch. So I'd put the value of this watch around $100, maybe $140, just because of the rarity of it. But again, I am not too arrogant to admit that I might be wrong, and this watch might be worth $10, and I overpaid way too much. But I really don't care how much it's worth, because it's worth a lot more to me than $100 or $200, and I don't think this watch will leave my collection. Especially, as I mentioned, this is kind of a perfect golf watch, as well as when I go for riding my bike. Perfect watch for that.
Alright guys, so that was my review of the little Panda vintage Seiko chronograph. Instantly, that watch became one of my favorite watches. I appreciate you watching until the end. Click the thumbs up if you liked the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. As I said before, our goal is 1,000 subscribers. When we reach that, I'll have a special video review of a watch that costs $25,000. That's crazy money. But that's all to come in the future. Leave your comments in the comment section below about this little Panda here. And once again, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.